All right, so good evening, everyone. Welcome to our first U Talks on the Climate Action Series brought to us by the Upsilon Climate Action Network. I'm honored to be hosting this event. My name, by the way, is Dominica Huang, Batch 95, and our speaker tonight is one of the very promising, bright young leaders of our country today. So I'm sure you've all seen him on TV being the spokesperson of the Department of Energy. And I know that you are as excited as I am to know more about what the Philippine government is doing to meet the Paris Agreement targets. But before we go into that, allow me to brief you on the format of our U-Talks. So this is going to be a 1-hour session, 20 minutes of which will be allocated to Q&A or questions and answers. If you have not submitted your questions yet, you can still do so, I suppose, by typing your questions in our chat box. And our discussion will focus on climate solutions, ideas, and best practices. So we all know that our planet is in a pretty bad shape today, but we hope that after our session tonight, we would all be inspired to contribute to solving the many environmental issues we are facing today. This, of course, is open to the public, free of charge. No, but please, we encourage you to donate to any green organization of your choice. All right, so now to tell us more about our project, let me introduce the person behind this initiative. So he should be able to articulate better what it is exactly we want to achieve from this U-Talk series. I'm certainly very proud of him. He is my batchmate in the fraternity. We were initiated back together back in 1995. But instead of simply reading his impressive credentials, I decided to share a few things about him. So this person has been very passionate about everything he gets involved in. Back in UP, my batchmate used to identify with militant groups. Of course, this is not going to be an ideological debate, right? We have brads from from opposite sides of the spectrum. This is definitely not the forum for that, right? But back then, Norman was very passionate about his views and excelled in the activities that he did. From there, he decided to become a teacher and even got me to join him in teaching high school math to underprivileged adults in the night high school program of La Salle Green Hills. He was an excellent teacher and well loved by his students. Of course, he was doing this while finishing his civil engineering degree in UP. After graduation, he became a businessman and owned a popular bar in Makati back in the early 2000s. I even partnered with him in a construction business together with another Brad, Jerry Agustin. So indeed, he succeeds in everything that he does. I'm glad that from being a communist, right, to being a capitalist, he is now a very passionate environmentalist. And I feel assured that we have someone like him making sure that our children will inherit a clean and sustainable planet. He was even trained by no less than the Vice President of the US, Al Gore. Norman is a climate reality leader and is currently based in Winnipeg, Manitoba, Canada, where he practices energy modeling that measures energy consumption of buildings and recommends strategies that reduce greenhouse gas emissions. He also sits as Director of Sustainable Building Manitoba, which is a nonprofit organization that advocates green building practices in Canada. So friends, brothers, please welcome Mr. Manitoba himself, Mr. Norman Acheron Garcia, Batch 95.
Thank you, Kabash, for the introduction. I'm just gonna share my my slide decks. Hey, can you see my screen now?
No.
Oh, sorry. Okay. Just a minute.
Hmm.
Okay, how about this?
Yes. You can
Okay, so I'll just make it quick so we can go to the main topic. So this is the first picture of the Earth fully illuminated that changes the way any of us ever saw. It was taken on the last of the Apollo missions, and it changed the way that humanity thought about our common home. So it reminds us that we are all connected and that our actions have an impact on our planet. So there are three questions about climate crisis. Must we change? Can we change? Will we change? So first, must we change? The scientific community all around the world has been telling us for a long time that yes, we must change. So the sky is not a vast and limitless expanse the way it appears to us. In reality, there's just a thin shell of atmosphere surrounding the planet. So we're putting 162 million tons of man-made global warming pollution into the atmosphere every single day. So energy from the sun comes to Earth in the form of light and warms up the planet. Some of that heat is re-radiated from the Earth back in the space, and some of that outgoing heat is trapped by the greenhouse gas layer, which is a good thing. But now we are making that layer much thicker. More heat is trapped and is warming our planet at an unprecedented rate. So there are many sources of human-caused global warming pollution: agricultural practices, forest burning, transportation, and many other factors. But the main source and cause is the burning of fossil fuels. So fossil fuels still provides more than 80% of the world's energy. Fuel use and emissions have gone up dramatically since World War II. As a result of this pollution being trapped in the atmosphere, global temperatures have risen dramatically. 19 of the 20 hottest years ever measured with instruments have been since 2002, and 7 hottest have been the last 7 years. On a global basis, more than 90% of all the extra heat energy is going into the oceans. So this heat makes ocean-based storms like hurricanes, typhoons, and cyclones stronger and much destructive. So the extra heat also disrupts the water cycle. The amount of water vapor that evaporates off the oceans increases as the ocean warms. So that water vapor is carried over land and often falls in much bigger precipitation events. So when the land can't absorb all the water that falls in these larger storms and downpours, we see floods and mudslides. So this is my hometown, Paula Oriental, Mindoro, which was devastated by Typhoon Kita in 2020. So the strongest typhoon ever recorded in that province. So that same extra heat energy that is pulling more evaporation off the oceans and feeding the storms is also pulling the soil moisture out of the ground, making the droughts take much more quickly. If you stand back and look at water use around the world, almost everywhere, a little over 10% is domestic, around 20% is for factories, and 70% is for agriculture. But it's important to note that as the temperature goes up, the demand for water use goes up for people, for animals, for crops, for industry, and all uses. So we're already seeing decline in yield. And for each 1 degree of warming, these 4 crops, which makes up 2/3 of the caloric impact for human civilization, are experiencing significant declines. As the animals are forced out of their traditional habitats and come in closer contact with other animals, the transition of the virus between species give more opportunities for it to mutate and more chances for it to contact humans. When we deforest, we come into contact with more pandemic diseases like the COVID-19. All of these tropical diseases, including COVID-19, are moving toward the north and the south from the areas of the equator. So, of course, air travel has a lot to do with this, but the climate crisis is changing the conditions on the ground where these diseases take root and become endemic, and a lot of these are becoming more and more serious. So, do we have to change? Yes, we do. But what about the second question? Can we change? So the answer to this question is very exciting and positive. So we got the solutions available to us now. So 21 years ago, the best projections for wind energy told us that we would reach 30 gigawatts of wind energy by 2010. Well, we have beaten that mark by 20 times over. Wind energy could supply 40 times more electricity than the entire world currently uses. So with solar, the story is even more inspiring. So again, 19 years ago, the best available predicted that we might be able to install 1 gigawatt of solar energy per year by the year 2010. Well, when 2010 rolled around, we beat that goal by 17 times over. So what about this past year, 2020? So we beat that goal by an incredible 132 times over. So every hour, the Earth gets as much energy from the sun as we need to run the entire global economy for 1 year. So back in 2009, investments in fossil fuels were still larger than renewables. But then, in a few years, you see it flips over, and now the difference is growing dramatically year by year. And the auto companies understand this. These are all the auto manufacturers in the world that have already announced they're going to stop making internal combustion engine vehicles and switch over to electric vehicles. So agriculture needs to be part of the solution as well. So we talk about the threats to the food system, and there are opportunities in agriculture to sequester carbon. So here are some of the key regenerative agricultural practices that are already available. So, can we change? The answer is absolutely yes. Third question, will we change? So here too, there's exciting news. So in December of 2015, the Paris Agreement became a landmark in the multilateral climate change process because for the first time, a binding agreement brings all nations in a common cause. So after this you talk, we hope that we inspire you to use your voice, use your vote, and your choices in the marketplace and in your life. So speak truth to power like your world depends on it. So we need your help. Okay, so that ends my presentation. Let me share the slide back to our main topic.
All right. So while Norman is sharing the slides, yeah, let me introduce our main speaker this evening. Certainly, he does not need any introduction. As I mentioned earlier, we see him regularly on TV, being the spokesperson of the Department of Energy. Let me say that I consider him my kuya. Wimpy, pasensya ka na. I know you look younger than me, but you are 1 year ahead of me in Ateneo High School, and we also served together in the UP College of Business Administration Student Council. And during that time, I was actually joining the fraternity. I was joining together with my batchmate, Orland Di Castro, and we were both of us were in the student council with Wimpy that time. And because of the endless missions we had to do, Orland and I struggled to perform our duties in the student council. Of course, Kuya Wimpy covered for Orland and me. And back then, Wimpy was already self-negating for us, although we were still neophytes. And he was certainly a campus figure, and we knew that he was destined for great things. And yet, he always remained humble and willing to help. In fact, I was surprised to see him join me, in my campaign sorties when I ran for barangay captain. When at that time he was already preparing to be Congressman of Camarines Sur. So he's certainly a great friend and an exemplar Upsilonian. I am sure that he continues to self-negate today, always putting the welfare of others above his own, especially in his current capacity as Undersecretary of Planning and Investment and Media Affairs of the Department of Energy. Prior to his role at the DOE, he was tasked to lead its Power and Renewable Energy programs. Wimpy hails from Tigaon, Camarines Sur, where he served as Congressman of the 4th Legislative District. As a member of the House of Representatives of the Philippines, he pursued several bills, including the Anti-Money Laundering Act and amendments to the Procurement Act. Wimpy earned his Bachelor of Science degree in Business Administration in 1997 from the University of the Philippines. He started his Bachelor of Laws in the Ateneo Law School and continued it from the San Sebastian College Recoletos Institute of Laws. He passed the bar in 2009. And Wimpy started his government career back in 1997. He was Housing Commissioner of the Housing and Land Use Regulatory Board in 2010 and Deputy Secretary General of the Housing and Urban Development Coordinating Council in 2011. Ladies and gentlemen, please welcome Attorney Felix William, Buquid Fuentebella, Batch 93.
Thank you very much, Dominic. Thank you very much, Norman, to Batch 95, whom I consider to be my younger brothers, but most of you really look older than I am. But kidding aside, what I have learned in Upsilon, we have also been carrying it out in our public service. So you would see different faces or different management skills when we perform our duties for our country and for our countrymen. So when Norman, who is now living in Canada, and it's 5 in the morning there, contacted or tried to call me up to organize this with Upsilon Sigma Phi Alumni Association. I also invited the Department of Energy. We are very much willing to be of service and to enlighten our audience, especially so that I was informed that we have a lot of law students here joining us, mostly from Mindanao. So, maayong gabi. We are working on a Saturday, and Norman is woke up at 4:30 in the morning, and it's 10 in the evening, I think, in New Zealand, in some of our participants joining from all over the world. So thank God for technology, for bringing us together in discussing what the energy sector of the country is doing for our globe, for our Mother Earth. So you have here the Paris Agreement discussion and the response of the energy sector of the country. You also have the logo of our campaign for the energy sector. If you notice, Norman discussed wind technology. Yung poste pa lang natin dito sa slide na to, nilagyan na natin ng wind, because it's really possible. For the house, we want it to be energy efficient. So we emphasize using LED, and we have a do-it-yourself or power systems that are now available. Thank God nga for technology for bringing us together. So the e-power mo is a campaign that consumers have this power to exercise energy practices that are more protective of Mother Earth. We also have the use of gasoline, diesel that we mix with biofuels to make it cleaner for the use of our transport system. And so we emphasize the hashtag Enerhiyang Atin so that we can have a common campaign. No? Ito, Pilipinong-Pilipino. We have hashtag energy ability, but this is a hashtag Enerhiyang Atin so that we can have more sustainable use of our energy sources for our economic development. Next slide. Yeah, next slide, please. Okay. So, no, not that. Next slide.
Nag-freeze lang yung aking computer. Just a minute.
You can give the control to Hershey so that we can be smoother.
Oh, okay. Sige, I'll pass the control. Just a minute.
Hershey, share screen na Hershey. Okay, I'd like to introduce the Department of Energy personnel joining us here. We have Director Jess Tama from the Planning Bureau. He is due to retire this October. So I befriend him because in a while he will be a millionaire. But kidding aside, he's a very loving leader of the Bureau. And he's a very good guy. No? He never loses his temper. We also have Miss Hershey. Hershey de la Cruz is our expert in the climate change issues. She deals with the Climate Change Commission, and she's my coach in all our endeavors. So I will be here to discuss the UN, the Paris Agreement, and then we will discuss what the Philippine Energy Plan is and what scenarios that we have plotted, what we have to present so that we would know our roadmap. No? Just like in Upsilon before, we have this planning session where the boss man or our head will give out what his view is as far as the term would be and how the members will respond. That's the energy response for the energy sector and how everyone will follow. But since the Philippines is not like Upsilon, no? Because in Upsilon, it's very easy. You have uno and you have dos, which is basically the political will. So we have to convince our countrymen, our consumers on how to really participate because most of this will be up to the consumers. So we emphasize that. Next slide. So we're also happy that the country is one among the signatories of the Paris Agreement. So just a brief background on what Norman was saying earlier. So first, we have this conference of parties, the decision-making body of the convention. So all states are parties, all states that are parties here, we have 197 signatories to the convention are represented and they look into the legal instruments. So for the legal, soon-to-be legal luminaries here, the law students, we have legal instruments in international law. And these are binding instruments, especially when we voluntarily submit to our sovereignty to that decision. And that goes into treaties. We have agreements with certain countries. So we also have an agreement with a group of countries, and sometimes it's called a convention. In that convention, there was a Kyoto Protocol in 1997, wherein the parties that agreed here, the countries that agreed, are the developed nations. So sila muna in 1997. So they were talking about how to save how to improve our situation as far as the environment is concerned. So they had targets. When they had targets, they saw that their targets were not being hit. So parang siguro, just like the officers of Upsilon before, we see that the targets are not being hit. If the bossman says, most of you should be honor students, no? But hindi na-hit yung target. So from there, we see that we need more participation, not only from the developed countries, but also from the developing countries. And that's where the Paris Agreement comes in. So it's not just a talk about what are the strategies, but what we need is an agreement on how we can achieve certain strategies so that we can have a better result for our country, for our Mother Earth. So, good thing is, the Philippines, we, parang sa Upsilon, when Ted Herbosa, Danny Concepcion, the administration, UP administration would ask all UP fraternities, organizations, can you sign this agreement? And the Philippines signed all. The United Nations Framework Convention on Climate Change, we signed it. Kyoto Protocol, okay, we signed it, and the Paris Agreement. So we have our country being influential and being very active, despite our size and despite our very small footprint, carbon footprint. Next slide. So that's the background. We are well represented in the community. So what is the Paris Agreement? It talks about the objective, and there's a principle of equity, because in international law, we have to understand that the big nations, o parang si Norman, communist, yung kayang magbigay, parang community pantry, magbigay ng kaya, kumuha ng tama. Parang ganon. Kaya yung ibang mga, sinasabi, communist yun, doesn't matter. It's food. Anyway, so, ang sinasabi dun sa principle of equity is, okay, meron tayong common goal, kulang ang magugutom, parang goal ng community pantry, pero kanya-kanyang responsibility. Yung iba magbibigay, yung iba ay tatanggap. Pero lahat tayo may pare-parehong gagawin. We have to perform our obligations, our responsibilities. So we emphasize that there are responses and impacts that should go towards sustainable development. So what is sustainable? Yung patuloy, hindi mapuputol. It can be continued. Hindi mapuputol in the next generation. And syempre, you also have to balance it out na hindi pwede magkaroon ng poverty because of this. And there's poverty eradication. Okay. So we emphasize that we need participation, so we have to educate ourselves. That's why we open this to the public, so that we can really argue and discuss, and so that we can really have transparency in our discussions. Please feel free to type in the chat. I'll try to answer them when you immediately chat, or I'll answer them some of the questions or your comments later. So use the chat while I'm talking here. And we also recognize the importance or the engagement of all levels. So for example, in this forum, we have students. We acknowledge that we are very important. We have Dr. Ted Hilbos is here. We have lawyers. So we have businessmen. We have someone from the mining sector. Yeah, all of you. We have to really discuss because this is an engagement. But as far as that Paris Agreement is concerned, it's an engagement of government, of the governments and the big actors. So again, it's sustainable, patuloy na lifestyle, sustainable patterns of consumption and production. So that's what the Paris Agreement talks about. Next slide. So this was discussed by Norman earlier. How does global warming happen, and why does it result to climate change? So that's what you see on the left side. This explains the greenhouse effect. So what are the causes of the the greenhouse gas emissions. So that's what you have in the middle, no? Mostly because of crude oil on the right, the oil products, coal. So what do? We have to mitigate and adapt so that we can have sustainable development. So the goal of the Paris Agreement is to limit the average global temperature increase to way below 2 degrees Celsius. That's why when you enter, yun yung password, no? Below 2C. So that we can attain net zero emissions by 2050. So next slide, please. So these are just the details on the agreement. No? We talk about the long-term goal in Article 2. Article 3 is what is the nationally determined contribution. So ibig sabihin yan, hindi yan pinipilit sa inyo. No? Ano kaya? Tapos ano yung mitigation? No? Or how do we reduce the emissions? Ano yung adaptation? How do we strengthen our ability to deal with the climate impacts? So these are different terms. No? So we were introduced to a new language, climate change language. Mitigation and adaptation are different strategies, but both of them will lead towards sustainability. And Article 8 talks about loss and damage. Our Secretary Foresee, looks at this, no, or terms this as a climate justice kasi na ano tayo Pilipinas, tinatamaan tayo. Sinabi ni Norman kanina, yung bayan niya sa Oriental Mindoro was affected by Typhoon Quinta. We also have the Majority Leaders District, no? Si Congressman Romualdez, who's also an Upsilonian. They were affected by Haiyan, no? Si Yolanda. So next slide. So we also ask for climate justice. Next slide. We also the support, no? That we ask for, no? Financing to build clean and resilient futures. So you have windows for green financing na lumalabas. So that's important that the Filipinos or our countrymen understand this because we look for opportunities on how to economically be strong, but at the same time address, no, all these climate change challenges. And the technology development and transfer is also there, capacity building, transparency, no? Paano natin ginagawa? So we share our programs and plans and how do we account? Because this is a science, hindi to pwedeng tsamba. Pag sinabi ng bossman, dapat maging honor. So, hindi mo pwedeng dayain yung grades. May grading system tayo. So, pag sinabing dapat maraming manalo sa eleksyon, so may eleksyon yan. So, hindi yan pwedeng basta-basta manipulahin. So, ganun din yung numbers natin. Hindi yan basta-basta pwedeng dayain. Next slide. So, we have the mitigation, the finance, and the capacity building. For the developed countries, look at the role. And for the developing countries, look at the roles. So dyan na mag-iiba, no? Magbigay ng kaya, kumuha ng tama. So the developed countries will take the lead in undertaking the economy-wide absolute emission reduction targets. Yung developing countries continue to enhance mitigation efforts. So yung mga Pilipino minsan, pag hindi naiintindihan, yes, it can be, any agreement can be amended. That's right. That's part of contract. Pero minsan mahirap kasi maraming mag-agree dapat doon. So to provide developed countries as far as financing is to provide and communicate skilled financial resources. Yun yung developed countries. Sa atin sa Pilipinas, voluntarily provide support. No? Kasi nga, developing nga tayo, no? Kailangan humambol. Yung capacity building, no? Enhance support for and communicate capacity building actions. Tayo naman should regularly communicate progress on capacity building. So, I would like to ask whether the Paris Agreement can be amended. Yes. Just like any other contract, pwedeng amendahan. Kaya lang mahirap nga kasi maraming nakapirma. So, kailangan mag-usap-usap ulit and then amend. Next slide. So, mitigation to undertake communicate na nationally determined contributions, and formulate low greenhouse gas emission development targets. So that's mitigation for all parties. No? So this kanina, rich versus poor countries, or ito naman, common efforts. Lahat na tayo, mitigation, adaptation, loss. So you have to understand, no, that there are levels to the agreement. No? Who, you, parang nag-text si Norman sa akin, hindi pala naka-record. Sino ka? Rich ka ba o poor? Pero common, ito lahat gagawin. So that's how it is. So anong gagawin natin sa capacity building, etc. Now that we understand the common efforts, next slide, and the differentiated efforts. Next slide, Hirsch. Sobra. Okay, so we gave them an inventory, no, in 2010. So as far as our records are concerned, these are our numbers, no, for the energy sector and the transport sector. So why do we emphasize the energy sector and the transport sector na sama sa amin? No? Kasi pumapasok sa amin yung gasolina, diesel, kerosene. So yun yung nangyari. No? We have the GHG emissions and the transport sector of the energy, ito, combined with 77.3 million tons of carbon dioxide equivalent. So there's a science in measuring this. So energy industries, which include electricity, generation, and oil refining, have the highest share. And then the energy use of manufacturing. So next slide, please. So from the agreement, we now have the Philippine Energy Plan of 2018 to 2040. But before I leave the agreement, would like to ask whether the Paris Agreement can be amended. Actually, the Paris Agreement was an amendment to the Kyoto Protocol. So that's how it happens. Okay. So we go to the PEP. Next slide. So the Philippine Energy Plan is a snapshot of where we are and where we want to go. No, it's a plan. So sabihin ng ng student council leader natin, this is our situation, no? As far as the College of Business Administration and Accountancy is concerned, may accounting, our situation is 98% past the board. That's where we are now. Where we want to go, we want 100%. So, ganun din dito, no? Sa 2019, if you get a snapshot of where we are, this is called the Sankey diagram. No? Mas makapal yung linya, mas madami. Mas madaming galing sa, on the left side, you have the sources, no, of crude, yan yung pula, then biofuel, sobrang konti, manipis na linya. Then you have the natural gas, which is the cleaner fossil fuel. Then you have the coal, ang kapal, no, madami. And then you have the big show, the renewables. The big show is biomass, geothermal, BG, solar, hydro, ocean, and wind. So that's our picture now. And then, when you go to the right in the middle, you have the transformation. Some of them become gasoline, diesel, kerosene, and some used to the transport sector. So makita niyo na yung output dito sa kanan. Ito na yung mga consumers, no? Transport, household, industry, services, and non-energy use of all these resources. Dito naman sa bottom, sa gitna, no? Sa baba. Yan yung ibang coal, yung ibang geothermal, hydro sources, tinatransform, ginagawang kuryente. Yan. Pumupunta dyan sa kanan. So you have electricity and then the transmission and distribution lines. Yung mga wires. So that's where we are. So we have measurements for that. So we're improving our numbers still, but we have measurements for that. Next slide. We emphasize energy efficiency. Yan. So ngayon, ang indigenous o sariling atin is 51%, ang imported is 49%. Yun yung pinapakita dito sa upper left. Ibig sabihin, pag nagka-problema sa Israel, Middle East, oops, may problema ba tayo? Meron. Vulnerable, right? Because most of it is imported. So there's a need to shift to indigenous to make it more sustainable. So we also have, if that's the energy mix, remember class, mga estudyante, on the right side, we have the power mix. That's different, no? Energy is the total, whereas the generation of power is different. That's electricity lang. That's one segment of the energy. So we have coal. It's more than 50%. For the total energy, we have coal and oil, more than 50%. So yan ang picture ng Pilipinas. Pero pangit ba tong picture na to? Hindi naman. Kasi yung other RE natin, like 1/3 not hydro, geothermal, it's almost a third. No? And in the ASEAN, we're kind of doing well. We're more or less at the top. So that's where the country is. Next slide, please. So from there, from where we are, we go into forecasting. Sabihin ng mga officers, no? Boss, paano mag-honor yung mga yan? Ito yung projections natin, no? Project sila. So ganun din, no? Paano natin makikita yung future? No? So the Philippine Energy Plan has adopted the NEDA gross domestic product projections, Philippine Statistics Authority population growth rates. So lahat yan pasok. This is science-based. And the base year that we used is 2018. So I will introduce you to two terms so that we will not be confused. What is BAU? Business as usual. Yan yung wala tayong gagawin. Kaya lang natin na tuloy-tuloy lang tayo. Coal, ganyan kadami. Oil, ganyan kadami. RE, ganyan lang. That's a business as usual. So, we also have the clean energy scenario where we put in additional programs. Paano tayo magkakaroon ng change? So, that's how we also plan to improve. So, BAU, business as usual, clean energy scenario, are paano yung changes. So, next slide. So, makikita natin, naingayan ba kayo dito? Na may noisy ba dito? From where I am? Dominic?
Medyo, brother, merong may maingay na...
Can you hear me?
But we can hear you. But yun lang, medyo...
I can transfer because it's raining.
I
just transfer. Okay. So the energy demand, didilim lang to ha. I'll turn off my camera and I'll continue talking. So the energy demand, where we also include in the BAU to complete the Sankey and the clean energy scenario. All these, we see what the behavior will be, and then we also look into the impact of the, we also look into the impact on the supply side. So we see a transformation of the power generation, if we become more efficient, and improve the numbers in refinery. So how do we do this? Next slide, please. Next slide, yeah. So the Philippine Energy Plan introduces all these strategies, no? Boosting indigenous energy production. So tinanong nyo, bakit may oil pa din or coal? Because again, hindi natin basta-basta pwedeng gawin na magbago. No? Parang yung mga ni-recruit natin, yung oil and yung coal, madudumi. Mga ni-recruit na members, parang sa frat ba o sa eskwelahan. May madudumi pero naaasahan. Kasi disiplinado sila eh. Pag sinabing takbo, takbo. Parang kotse. Pag takbo, takbo. Pag siminage on mo, okay. Eh yung RE, yung wind, moody sila. Malinis. Guwapo. Malinis. Kaya lang, moody. Ayaw gumalaw minsan. Ayaw mag-blow ng wind. Ayaw lumabas ni sun ng gabi. So, paano yun? Kailangan i-improve pa sila. Pag nilagyan mo ng baterya, biglang nagiging expensive. But there are reliable ones, pero minsan wala ring tubig. No? Mag-iipon ka ng tubig sa dam. So, these are the items na medyo kailangan balansin. So, as the RE technology improves, and we still have to continue yung sariling atin. Why also? Yung malampaya, no? We have to protect it. Because it really improves our situation economically. So we also have to anticipate na the Filipinos will continue. Continue what? Producing babies. So I don't know what the strategy of the DOH and Dr. Ted Herbosa would be as far as that is concerned. But as far as the Philippine energy sector is concerned, we anticipate that there will still be that behavior of increase in population. So we have to increase our power plants. We have to put up terminals. We have to put up more oil storage, etc. Because we see the numbers. So we also promote and expedite investment. How do we improve our consumer welfare? No? Because even in Oriental Mindoro, no, the place of Norman, it will still be nagkakaroon pa ng power interruptions. So may systems pa tayo within the country that are not that strong. Dapat may ilaw para may baby. Pwede kasing i-turn off bread. So, yeah. So, yun yung strategy, no? Kailangan ma-improve yung services for the country, especially in Mindanao. You don't have a spot market there. Sabihin ng ibang estudyante, ano po yun? Wala kayong market, so kailangan mag-rely lang kayo sa kontrata ng distribution utilities. And if you lack power sa kontrata nyo, you have lack of supply. Unlike here in Luzon and Visayas, pag naubos yung kontrata nila sa power plant, no, pwede silang kumuha sa market ng extra. Yun nga lang, gumagalaw din yung presyo. Supply and demand. And also, the Philippine Energy Plan strengthens partnership, local and international. Next slide. So, by 2040, no, ang kailangan nating investment is, konti lang naman, no? 10 piso, hindi. 10 trillion pesos. And we can produce 600,000 jobs. So we see this as opportunities. How we will do it, there's a lot of pencil pushing that needs to be done. But we have to do this. For the RE sector, for the energy efficiency sector, these are the main drivers and the new technologies. Next slide. So here we have a strategy for conventional and renewable energy. We also have a strategy for the power sector. The downstream oil is gasoline, diesel, kerosene family. We have a strategy for energy efficiency under the Philippine Energy Plan. We have the strategy for the environment, for resiliency. Pagbalik agad ng kuryente after bagyo, earthquake. What are the roles of the local government units, and the strategy for consumer welfare. Next slide. So, para maging basic yung understanding ng ating students, this is a simple rule. The time of Brad Cassie, I think they call this arithmetic, no, Brad? Sa amin, mathematics na kasi. So ganun yung natin, no? Parang puro plus lang naman to eh. So the business as usual, or the reference scenario, we add energy efficiency strategies to lower the demand, right? Walang sayang na paggamit ng enerhiya. And then we add renewable energy so that we displace some of the coal and the oil. And then we add other energy technologies. We're researching on hydrogen. We're looking into nuclear. Now, we did not give up on the technology. Probably we gave up on Bataan. Some of it, they want to really get rid of Bataan after we pay us paying for it until 2018. So, yun nga, baka magsalita ako sa foreigners, never mind. So, Bataan nuclear power plant is really an international problem sa atin because we allowed ourselves to be vulnerable to both political pressure within and outside. And the use of international information communication technology, no? Meron na tayong paraan to control our appliances through the cell phone. Those are smart homes and smart grid technologies, no? To make it more efficient. So that we achieve that clean energy scenario. Again, sabi ng bossman, sabi ng student council head, we have to achieve this. We have to have more clean. So there's the strategy, right? So next slide. So we talk about energy efficiency and the renewables to achieve where we are headed, no? So this is the reference or business as usual scenario. You see that the green portion, pag pinabayaan lang natin, the renewables portion on the bottom left, mas naging manipis. Okay? Kumapal yung coal at kumapal yung oil. On the right, next slide. If we do our intervention, nakita mo, kumapal yung green at tumipis yung coal. Yung oil na yan, pwede nating panipisin pa, no? If we're able to have alternative, no, sources of energy for our transportation. So the transformation to e-vehicles is very important. No? The bicycle lanes that are being introduced by MMDA can be utilized also by PWDs na elektrika yung wheelchair. Yun ang mga pwede. Parang may convergence yung health, PWD, tsaka yung energy sector. Pwede nating ma-improve. And the energy efficiency is on the right side, walang sayang. So next slide. So this is the graph presented differently. The reference scenario versus the clean energy scenario, where you see that bumababa yung coal and oil dependence ng country. Next slide. Okay. So we have the Energy Efficiency and Conservation Act. For the law students, no, this is how you read laws. Kasi we did this presentation kahapon in like this slide. In 5 minutes by using the original law, reading the original law. So paano po yun, sir? No? Yung mga title ng chapters lalagay nyo sa taas. Roles and responsibilities. Nino, ano yung nangyari sa ilalim yan? No? Sa chapter na yan. DOE is lead agency, and then you have the roles of the BOI, the Climate Change Commission, COA, Commission on Higher Education, etc. And then the next chapter talks about the creation of the Interagency and Energy Efficient and Conservation Committee. No? And then you have who are the members of that, no? DOE, DBM, etc. So we have this law that also talks about the certified energy conservation officers and the ESCOs. If we use more e-vehicles, yes, but the oil may go down, and if we have a strategy, and I'm answering the question of Dr. Herbosa, but if we have a strategy for making our sources of electricity more renewable, then we achieve that goal. Kasi mas madumi pa rin yung diesel kaysa sa coal nga, mas madumi pa yung diesel. Kasi mas hindi efficient. So, how do we also have in the chapter, no, energy performance standards. So yung electric fan, yung air conditioner, nilelabel natin yung mga energy efficient. Okay. Yun yung batas, no? RA 11285. Next slide. Yung paborito ni Norman pala sa ilalim, previous slide, is yung energy efficient buildings, no? Pinakialaman na natin yung Norman kasi nakausap kita. Takot ako sa'yo. So December 2020, pinirma ni Secretary Cusi yung policy for the buildings. And discuss that later in detail. Next slide. So we have designated establishments, no? Type 1, ito yung mga buildings na papasok sa type 1. No? Ito naman yung buildings na papasok sa type 2. At meron kayong obligation. Kasi malaki kayo, so meron din strategy. Kasi nagkakaroon na ng yung cost-benefit analysis dito. So, yung cost, pwedeng dagdagan ng konti, pero kasi yung benepisyo, kasi malaki ka, mas malaki din. So, meron na yan, napasok na sa batas. May demand-side management. No? Demand side is, di ba sa demand, yung tamang paggamit ng kuryente o ng sasakyan. Anong responsibility ng DOE, ERC, PEZA? What are the incentives? How do we do waste management? And how do we strengthen the bureaucracy that will do it? And what are the penalties? There are penalties in the law. Next slide. So, for the Energy Efficiency Bureau, ito yung mga ginagawa nila. No? Meron silang ginawang energy performance standards and labeling requirements. So, may energy labeling, meron yung strategy for minimum energy performance. So, bago ka makapasok o bago ka makapagtinda ng appliance mo sa Pilipinas, may minimum energy performance required. At para namang makaroon ng consumer choice, na testing sa lab yung mga yan, at may 5 stars, 4 stars, 3 stars. 5 star being the highest. So, that's how it is. Energy consumption, pull it down. Look at the blue arrow going down, and the savings will go up despite the more expensive appliance. Next slide. So for the buildings, we have strategies for building envelope. Nosebleed si Dominic. Ano ba yung building envelope? No? Paano mo ba binabalot yung building? So anong klaseng gagamitin mong pintuan? No? Yung pintuan na may sariling saradora, no? Automatic nagsasara. Or yung revolving door. Bakit siya energy efficient? Kasi yung lamig, pag lumabas, nasasara ka agad. Natatakpan yung butas. No? Pag air-conditioned yung area. Pag revolving door, umiikot yung door, no? Nako-control yung paglabas ng lamig. Yung bintana, nakaselyo yung palibot. No? Tinted ba siya? Tapos merong maximization of natural light. That's building envelope. How do we do the roof? No? Ibig sabihin, how do we design it? Lagyan ba natin ng kisame? O kasi kung hindi, tulad kanina, naingayan, kasi walang kisame yung portion ng bahay ko kung saan ako kanina. But mainit kasi doon. Pag walang, hindi tama yung pintura ng roof, nag-capture din ng init. And pag nag-capture ng init yung room, magasto sa aircon. So yun ang building envelope. And then we also tackle the electrical systems. No? Kung ano yung mas efficient. Nandoon ni rin yan sa department circular ng Department of Energy. And then the mechanical systems. Ano yung mga gamit sa loob ng building para maging energy efficient. So we have the energy conserving design of buildings that we partner with the civil engineers in improving the building code. And that was embraced already in DC 2020. When you see 12 in the middle, that means it was signed on December, no? The 12th month. And that is the number. That's the 26th Department Circular na nilabas ng DOE 2020. Okay? Next slide. So, ang strategy is, ito, very conservative pa, tingnan mo. 5% lang ang tinarget ng DOE. Bakit? Kasi ang gusto natin, yung sinasabit natin sa international community, is nag-i-improve. We don't want to tell, remember the analogy kanina? President Danny Concepcion wanted this, no, to be submitted, and the fraternity submitted, we will have the target 5% aggregate energy savings. But this will improve because that's what the Philippines wants to portray in the international community. Nag-improve pa kami aside from our targets. We have an assessment and baseline development of our key indicators. It's ongoing. We want to improve. And then we have a 10% increase penetration rate for electric vehicles. Oh, mababa. We'll get to the nuclear later. And then the energy efficiency is seen as a major driver. Kasi nandun pa lang tayo sa energy plus RE plus other technologies that will tackle nuclear also there. Next slide. So that's energy efficiency. Now we go to plus RE. We have the Renewable Energy Act, but this was 2008. So yung Energy Efficiency and Conservation Law, bago lang yon. Pero yung RE law, matagal na. 2008. So ano sinasabi niya? DOE is the lead. Then we have on-grid and off-grid use of RE. So nandiyan yung mga department circulars for all those studying energy policy and for all those law students who will, if it's available, take up energy law. That will be your, this is your guide. Ito yung mga policies natin for renewable portfolio standard. Ito yung quota system na ginagamit for the distribution utilities. Like Meralco, you have to buy RE, 1% of your demand, minimum, you increase it. You had a feed-in tariff, which is another non-fiscal system, the RE market, the green energy option, which gives a big building, for example, the entire UP system can purchase green energy from one supplier, a combination of solar and hydro probably. So pwedeng, kung malaki yung market na yan, more than 100 kilowatts per month, so pwede silang mag-green energy option. Yung consumer to, consumer tong net metering tsaka green energy option. And then how we improve the transmission and the distribution system to accommodate the RE. Remember, some of the RE are very moody performers. Moody. Parang sa basketball, yung solar, coach, laro ako. Bigla lang yung mga pasok. Yung coach mag-adjust. System operator. Yun yung transmission distribution system. Yung coach. And then, biglang umuupo yung solar na player. Bakit? Kasi walang sun. Cloudy. Ganon yung behavior niya. Kaya tawag sa kanila variable energy minsan. Minsan yung wind, ganon din, no? Hangin. Pasok sila. Tapos labas bigla. So, paano ma-improve yung system? Sinong sasalo? Pag biglang umuupo. Yeah? Kasi may game na nangyari. May demand eh. So, what's the government share and how do we comply with energy regulations? That's what the law says. No? Next slide. And the RE law also provides incentives. No? Maraming incentives yan. No? Yan, isa-isa natin. Next slide, please. And then we created a board, no? A board of advisors on where we should go. So this is a public-private partnership type, no? Because the representatives from the RE developers are part of the board. Even the banks, distribution utilities, electric cooperatives, and even the NGO. And there are also important offices from government, no? The heads of DOE, DTI, etc. That's the board that was created by the law. Then you have a fund, no? Na may trust fund tayo for RE development na hindi pa namin ito masyadong nai-implement. No? Kasi ang mga pag-establish kasi nito galing sa mga PAGCOR, CSO, minsan hindi naman nagre-remit, hindi naman namin nakakausap ng matino, ay mahirap talaga kasi maraming kumukuha ng pera sa kanila. Lalo na DOH, no? Tapos waste to energy technologies adaptation. It's all part of the law, no? Ano yung incentives for the host. We created a new bureau in the Department of Energy. There's congressional oversight, and there are penalties as well. Next slide. So that's the RE law. And the RE law states that we have an aspirational target of 35% by 2030, and then 50% by 2040. So these are our strategies. No? So we target, no? If we implement renewable portfolio standards pa lang, one of the strategies in the RE, no? Those are the reductions, no? 6.3 in the GHG and 10% by 2030 and by 2040 respectively. So that's the RE side. So energy plus RE. Next slide. So we even push the RE. Why? We have machineries for agriculture that utilizes diesel or sometimes nakasaksak sa grid. So we have productive uses of RE. So we have corn shellers, you have how to produce rice, no? Post-harvest facilities that are RE powered. So meron tayong biomass dryer, corn sheller, corn miller given in Davao Occidental. Kung sino mga taga Mindanao, nakapunta na ba kayo dyan? Sa sitio Mahayag, Davao Occidental. Sa sitio New Mabuhay, sa Malita, Davao Occidental. Nakapunta na kayo? We gave Abacus Spindler, no? Ang balaan na tribe yung audience namin. So, may ice plant dun sa Bohol, no? So, yan ang mga model na pilot projects. Next slide. So, we also have the competitive renewable energy zones because investors ask, where do we put our RE sources? So we have that in the plan, the renewable energy plan and our strategy. So the renewable energy reforms in the clean energy scenario is we want to have more than or at least 45,000 megawatts of additional RE capacity. And we have to combine it, no? Kasi di ba, bad behavior yung mga yan eh. But if you provide battery, energy storage, and smart grids, yes, mag-i-improve siya at pwede na siya mag-stay dyan. Yeah, we agree, Brad, that we have to build the hospitals that apply the energy efficient strategies under the circular. So it will be under that. Yes, also that's biomass, no? The waste to energy. So, as far as the other technologies are concerned, we continue to look into the development of the other technologies. Some say it's nuclear, but nuclear really has a problem as far as waste management is concerned. But we also are aware that Bill Gates and his group are not giving up with the nuclear technology. So is the Philippines. We have our DOSC looking into it. We don't give it up because there may be an answer for that waste management problem. But I think the game changer is ocean. For our country that is very porous. Daming butas kasi dami nating isla. And we have ocean. So that's one. And we also look into hydrogen power. So next slide. So as far as nuclear is concerned, we don't confine ourselves to the debate on whether or not we will revive the BNPP. It's the entire technology that we talk about. We have small modular systems that we are looking into, whether there will be an LGU, a local government unit that will go into that. Yeah, yes, you can have the copy of the presentation. If we have the LGU that can host a nuclear plant, go ahead. For as long as it will fit everything. Because at the end of the day, in energy kasi, everything should be harmonized. Hindi ka pwedeng basta-basta papasok. Kasi baka nakakagulo ka, nagpasok ka ng magulo. Philippine deep is very promising, but still, mahirap yung ocean. I've been looking at it, Brad, Philippine deep, and looking for foreign funding. It's quite difficult. No? Kasi parang pumapatak na mas mahal pa siya sa diesel, 18 pesos per kilowatt hour to 40 to 80 pesos per kilowatt hour for ocean technology. Ang labanan ng solar ngayon is wind is 4 pesos. Parang ganun. Per kilowatt hour. Okay, so smart grid is the ICT portion wherein nag-uusap-usap technically yung system natin. Sobra kuryente dito, pasok dun sa mas maraming demand dun sa kabila. So when you have a more efficient system, you have less waste and that makes it more energy efficient. The smart grid is cut when you're entering your home. So you have the smart home system naman on the right. Kasi yung smart grid, pag nababasa niya pa yung bahay mo, masyado ng intrusion sa right to privacy mo. Basta nila kung nakabukas yung ilaw mo sa living room, pag pinatay mo na, Tapos bubukas na yung ilaw mo sa kwarto mo, tapos papatay mo na, sabihin mo magnanako, tulog na, pasok na ako. You don't do, yun yung mga may, kaya yung smart home ibang system, kadalasan, that's the design. So next slide. That's how it is, no? And then we have that portion on energy resiliency policy. Normally, you see me on media when there are calamities. Because when I go out before the media, before the typhoon comes, I speak on how our preparations are. But it's really a signal. No? I'm not speaking sometimes that we are already prepared. I'm telling the distribution utilities that these are what you are supposed to do. Kaya lang, kung maririnig nyo ako, kausap ko consumers. Pero pinaparinig ko na yun sa Meralco, pinaparinig ko na yun sa mga power plants. When I talk, ito yung mga gagawin nyo. Pag may natumba dyan, dapat alam natin agad. Kasi makikipag-agawan kami ng pondo dito para mapadala sa inyo. Para mabalik natin agad yung kuryente, uunahin natin yung hospital, unahin natin yung commercial areas, inaano ko na yun, instructions na yun. So that's how it really goes, as far as we are concerned. But when you see me on TV, it's the consumer that I talk to. Don't worry, we need this, we need that. Yeah. Yes, we have a triple backup system for the COVID refrigeration storage. First is the backup to be provided by the NGCP, which they don't comply with, but we have to push them to comply. The distribution utilities should have a backup also, and they have to identify where that storage is, because if ever there will be trouble in the area, they should make sure that that feeder is fully protected, that the feeder is the distributor of electricity that serves that area. And the number 3 is the facility should have its own generating set, generating set, for refrigeration. So that's the instruction there. So from all these, we have 4 areas that we want to strengthen. The infrastructure, and then when we rebuild, it's better. What are the SOPs? And we look at the standards. From these 4 areas, guiding principles, we collate the submissions of all these sectors, upstream, downstream, LPG, power, RE. And most of them, pag nakita na natin yung pinakamagagaling na practices nila, pag nakita natin yung infrastructure, ito yung magandang ginagawa, it becomes a circular. It becomes utos, parang nagiging uno. Ina-adapt ng boss na, ito na yung utos. Okay, parang ganun. So, we build back better pag nakikita tayo ng isang magandang practice ng RE on how to build back better. And it's really not that costly. Nagiging uno siya, nagiging batas, Department Circular. So, next slide. That's the energy resiliency policy. So, the policy also created this group called the Task Force Energy Resiliency. Kaya namin nakukuha agad kung ano yung situation sa ground. It's because of this group. So when you see me on media talking when we have a calamity, all the inputs are from this group. So it's accurate. When I say it will be electricity by 4:30 p.m. in the area, kasi natayo na yung mga, nabalik na yung mga linya, it will happen. Okay? Next slide. So we also have the contingency plan, for the big one. So how do we restore electricity? How do we allocate petroleum? Ano uunahin? Siyempre, yung mga hospital, importante. Yung mga military bases. So, next slide. So we have these policy and measures for energy resiliency. So we institutionalize them. We conduct assessments, which we are doing now, because every 3 years we have to conduct an assessment. And the policy was signed 2018. It's already 2021. So we have to assess already on those 4 areas. Para hanapin mo kung anong gagawin mo uno, anong gagawin mong batas doon sa mga practices. And then develop the strategies as well as how do we disseminate knowledge. No? That's why we take advantage of this forum pala, this Upsilon talks. Next slide. So from there, next slide, we have the balik tayo sa international scene. So we have the Sustainable Development Goals, and this portion of the presentation gives you an idea how it completes itself. No? From what we did, we see that everything is aligned because we're looking into an affordable and clean energy, which is a sustainable development goal. And it's aligned to the climate action. So, nakatahi yan sa Philippine Energy Plan. Next slide. So you see the harmony in coming up with this plan from the Planning Bureau and the Department of Energy. Because what we really believe is that SDG 7 has an impact to, just like what Dr. Herbos has been typing, health issues, SDG 3. So yung hospital niya, sabi niya dapat may RE. Yes. Hindi lang RE. Energy efficient design. Revolving doors, well-sealed na mga bintana, the roof, maximizing the light. We also have an impact to end hunger because we're into food security. Because we have pre- and post-harvest facilities coming in. We also have an impact to SDG 7 because we have solar-powered pumping stations. Right? So the economic growth, climate change, SDG 13. So what do? We have our law and energy efficiency, resiliency. Aside from that, we have special studies, no? Climate, land, and energy, water synergies. I think I mentioned already that solar-powered pumping station. Then you have the total clean energy scenario target, which supports all these. Next slide. So it's really the political commitment. No? Kasi what is a movement? What is a doctrine if there's no political commitment? What is Upsilon without uno, dos, and tres? No? Which operationalizes us not to work. So what are our bases? No? Good thing kasi sa Upsilon, uno, dos, di naman kailangan explain. Pero dito sa Pilipinas, you have to explain the science behind it. What are the studies on climate impact? Cost-benefit analysis. What are the projections of the emissions and the scenarios? What are the systems to be utilized? And then, what are the roles of the members? Whole of nation, relevance, and addressing the barriers. And then, you implement. No? All levels of government, mainstreaming nationally determined contribution to everyone, including the budget process. Next slide. So those are the pillars of the NDC. Next slide. And looking at everything, you see that the energy sector really has a big chunk, big share. And not to bring down all the other sectors, but it's the energy sector also that's quite scientific about it and quite accurate about it, because I think I would have really a headache or a nosebleed if I would be part of the agriculture sector and how I will measure the greenhouse gas emission on their side. But for the energy sector, it's easier. But it's harder also in the sense that if we totally shift immediately, I think I will be crucified if a hospital of Dr. Herbosa will be out of power for even just 30 minutes. Big problem. No? Ano pa kaya yung dinaanan namin nila Dominic, no? Na grade school kami, 12 hours brownout na to Manila. Kakainis yun. And the economic growth is really problematic. So hindi yun basta-basta pwedeng magsabing RE is the way, shift tayo kaagad. No. We really have to be strategic and scientific about it. Next slide. So this is how we compute everything. And you see the numbers for 2010. And you see the numbers in 2040. And what this business line basically tells us is that from 2020 to 2030, the total GHG emission will be 2.8%, whereas 2020 to 2040, it will be 12.3%. Will we improve? Definitely, because our projections are, as I said earlier, conservative. We can improve. Next slide. It's just that we have investment requirements to do this. Next slide. So additional 20% cost. We also have a lot of policies to do this. No, we already have the Energy Virtual One-Stop Shop Act, which is a computerized system on acting on energy applications. Pakipagbayad is online, ease of doing business. We also have the LGU Energy Code, which is a guide for LGUs, how they can act on all energy applications within 15 calendar days, otherwise it will be deemed approved. We also have memorandum of agreement with, again, the food sector, pre and post-harvest facilities. And these are our pending MOAs, no? How we teach higher education on all these. Because this was not taught in si Taning ko, si Tantan, hindi naman to tinuro sa kanila eh. Yung mga RE courses sa engineering, wala naman to, di ba? Hanggang ngayon yata, wala pa eh. DepEd, kulang pa, no? TESDA, no? We have a lot of job opportunities here, no? Energy conservation officer, manager. They need TESDA training, installer of net metering and the like. We have a pending MOA with DOLE, mga babalik na mga OFW. We have a MOA for strategic communication plan on nuclear energy, and then the other one is we also have a PCOO for overall campaign for this, which I will discuss later. And then the Memorandum of Understanding or Convergence. And with USAID, we also have that for Energy Secure Philippines. This PSHERD is the arm of the DOST that looks into new technologies for energy. So yung mga inventor dito yan, pumapasok. Next slide. So from there, next slide, we go to consumer participation. So these are our campaigns, and we will be more active once we have the PCOO with Secretary Martin Andanal, who I think is an Upsilonian. Kidding. Sikreto pa ba yun? And so we have a pending memorandum of agreement with his group. So the e-Power Mo is the first stage, which is basically knowledge sharing, which has safety. Safety is like grade school, no? O, tandan. Grade school teaching, no? Safe use of energy. Tapos yung sunod is secure, no? How to provide 24/7 electricity or 24/7 energy products available, gasoline, diesel, kerosene. And the discarte, no? What are the energy efficient practices? And what are your choices? No? Retail competition, open access, net metering, green energy option. These are options for consumers. So from the e-Power Mo, we have the energy ability. No? How do we organize our consumers? We talk to Upsilon, we talk to students of Mindanao, lawyers, and we tell them about all these because you need it to be organized. And once you're organized and you are aware, we want you to be sharing and acting on the goal. What's our goal? It's increase awareness, self-sufficiency, sariling atin, sustainable development, and resilient systems. So yung enerhiyang atin is really our target. And we want all successful social media stories to have the same hashtag, enerhiyang atin. So that we can have a better way of organizing ourselves for media, especially social media. So next slide. So I guess I'm done. I hope I did not talk that much, but I was given a quota to talk for at least 40 minutes. So that's it. Thank you very much.
Thank you very much, Brad Wimpy. It is indeed very reassuring to learn more about what our government is doing, in making our country more energy efficient. So from influencing consumer behavior to expanding cleaner sources of energy. Hopefully, these interventions that you mentioned will happen soon. We've actually gone over time, but Norman, is it okay if we continue for a few more minutes so that we can answer some questions that were submitted to us? Okay, all right. So first question comes from Brad Yari Miralao.
Yeah.
So is he here? Nandito ka ba, Brad?
Well, he's in the energy sector. I see him.
All right. So is the Philippine government expecting the private sector to deliver on the Paris Agreement commitments made by the Philippine government?
Yes, we are. We are expecting everyone to deliver because we have strategies that are both mandatory and voluntary. The mandatory ones are like the renewable portfolio standards. And if they don't comply, we will probably incarcerate them. That's political will. That's why we also partner with the DOJ so that we can build cases. I call them white-collar crimes, by the way.
So, Brad, I think that answers his follow-up question kasi sabi niya dito, in case the private sector does not deliver, what is the backup plan? So I guess yung DOJ, you'll prosecute ba?
Some of these players think they can deal with the regulator. Hopefully,
right.
they can also deal with the DOJ.
All right. So, Brad, the next question is from my batchmate, Tristan Taninko. I think you mentioned him earlier, no? So are there incentives for companies in the Philippines who use renewable energy?
Well, there are, no, but we have to do more. No? The renewable energy law has provided for both fiscal and non-fiscal incentives. So fiscal incentives are basically money matters, no? Tax breaks, etc. The non-fiscal ones are not money matters, but nonetheless a priority in line. So parang ganong incentives. So yes, there are. We have to do more. That's why we hold a lot of dialogues, consultation on how. But we don't like to subsidize. You have to remember that subsidy sometimes is unfair because the Philippines has this policy that we give the subsidy directly to those in need and not the middlemen. And the middlemen are sometimes the businessmen. No? So, yun ang medyo mahirap tawirin as far as the Department of Finance and Congress is concerned. Yeah.
Thank you, Brad. So again, another question from Brad. This time from Francis De John. So the Philippines is a geothermal powerhouse. What is the government doing to increase its investments and use of renewable energy? So are we still on track to fulfill our NDCs as agreed in the Paris Agreement?
Yes, we are. We're on track. Although we don't want to be bullied by the international community, because at the end of the day, we keep on emphasizing that we are the victims here, and they were the ones who really caused all these. As far as geothermal is concerned, we pushed for it. In fact, we have a special. Don't accuse the Department of Energy for having favoritism in favor of RE, because that's provided in our law. So that's a policy. So for RE, we have around 100 megawatts available still, and we held an open and competitive selection process to have it bidded out for a developer. We also opened it to 100% ownership under Financial Technical Assistance, FTAA. No? For the law students, you can study that. No? The law students will have to read the law, read the Supreme Court decision on FTAA. Kasi nagiging issue na the DOE daw is violating the Constitution for doing that. So we can know. So when the activists were texting me, I told them, read the Supreme Court decision, read the RE law. It's within the law. Why did you open it up to the foreigners? You want them to compete with the local developers here. The local developers here are sometimes pampered because of lack of competition, so they don't behave. Parang manliligaw, no? Walang karibal, tamad manligaw. Lugi yung babae. Pero kung may kalaban, may karibal, parang sipag, no? Alas 4 pa lang, parang si Norman, gising na. Ganun. Iba
Kala
ko.
ko, kala ko ba sabihin mo maraming nililigawan, parang Norman.
Alam ko, isa
Sorry.
lang.
Dati yun. All right. Next question, Wimpy, is from Mig Sagkal.
Go ahead.
Uh,
the chat box. Not sure, Brad. Go ahead.
when will the first green energy auction be held, and where can we access details?
Okay. You have to monitor it in the website of the Department of Energy. It was targeted at June, but because of the depressed demand because of COVID, we had to revisit our numbers. Remember that we're dealing with a quota of demand. No? So since bumaba yung demand, we went back, I think, to 2019 numbers. So 1% is very low, and we may not need the quota by 2025 pa nga. So they're recomputing, but Secretary wanted it June or earlier, May, kaya lang hindi nga kaya because of the review of the numbers. So hopefully this year, third quarter.
All right, Brad, this question is from Jonathan Madumdum. Sorry if I mispronounced your name.
We're ranked number 3 right now, recently overtaken by one other country. Go ahead, I'm just answering the... Kasi depende rin kung ilan yung kaya natin. Depende kung anong nasa ilalim. 100 megawatts lang natitira. Go ahead, dong.
All right. Ito, Brother Medj, I think very practical. Sorry. How can we directly participate? I guess ano yung pwede nating gawin, no, dun sa to contribute to the Paris Agreement, no, individually.
Hindi ginagamit. Isara ang aircon paglalabas. Bumili ng appliances na energy efficient. Don't make love in the car, no? Kasi idling yan. No? Turn on the aircon. I'm just kidding. Nalala ko yung si Norman. Joke. Did not happen. So, all these walang sayang na paggamit ng energy, and you share your stories under those hashtags. No? If you work in a mining company like Dominic, or if you work in a ICT company like Tantan, no? What are your energy efficient and RE practices that you can share under those hashtags, so that we can share our success stories. Those are the small things but very important. Like Dr. Herbosa dreaming of a hospital that is hybrid, no, RE powered, etc.
Thank you, brother. This time from Brad Charlie Gatmaitan. Brad, do you foresee the Foreign Investment Act attracting more renewable energy investments?
No. Probably they will attempt, no? But I have a strong belief that our local players are very... Kasi iba yung Pilipinas, no? Pwede may pera yung foreigners, pero iba yung laro dito sa Pilipinas talaga. Kahit maliit tayo, malakas tayo mambalya. So, iba yung laro nila dito. Well, we can give the incentives and all to invite them. But I believe the Philippines has a very strong local developers for energy. Especially you have engineering graduates from UP. So I think we're okay. Good luck to the foreigners. Sabi ko na sa inyo, talaga yung foreigner.
All right. Brad, this time from Brad Kasi Katapang. So in terms of redevelopment, how does the Philippines rank? So are we on... RE development. Sorry, renewable energy development. Yes. I think
there was a ranking by the World Energy Council that ranked the Philippines number 1 among a lot of countries. Na nagulat kami, Brad. So we were saying that we were number 1 to the World Energy Council rankings. And then after around 3 or 4 consecutive years of being number 1, we lost our number 1 spot because we don't really know how they graded us, the entire world. So I think what we have to do is really focus na lang tayo dito sa NDC. Kasi yung grading system may kanya-kanyang palipad yung mga international communities. And sometimes we get carried away that what they're doing is the right thing, but at the end of the day, they're just selling something. They're selling an RE solar panel, etc. That's why they say that RE solar is the cheapest, etc. Yung pala nagbebenta. So well, the grading system should be credible and internationally accepted. Softwares would help. As far as the country is concerned, in the ASEAN, which is ginagalang naman yung numbers natin, we're among the top 3. No? Kasi yung RE share natin malaki. Yung iba papunta pa lang sa 1/3. Tayo 1/3 na. Kaya lang nga bumababa kung wala tayong ginagawa. So, that's where we are.
That's great to hear. Thank you, Brad. So I think we've answered all the questions already. So I see here questions from Brother Ted Herbosa, which Wimpy answered during his during his talk.
What are the mechanisms to enforce compliance of countries?
Okay.
In international law, there's no really compliance to enforce. No, wala tayong world police. That's why the West Philippine Sea is challenging. Because even if we won the case, the enforcement is really difficult in the West Philippine Sea issue. So that's international law. We will be ostracized if you don't follow it. You will have sanctions from other countries that they may impose on you. So probably that will happen. So yeah, economic sanctions are sometimes determined only by certain countries. So the America would sometimes impose an economic sanction against one country because of an international law violation or an agreement that is not complied with. So that's how it is. Okay.
All right. Meron pa ba? Any more questions? Oh, another question just came in.
During the NDC.
And
ano na lang yan, Jan, Santillan. There are strategies for us to get more funds from the international community because, as I emphasize, it's climate justice issue. So let it be. No, I don't think we can peg it at 72.29%, etc. Yes, it is possible to rebuild the Bataan nuclear power plant, but I don't think LGU Bataan is willing. Yes, we have a prototype. Mostly the development in ocean technology is in UK, but I told them stop working on the Atlantic Ocean. It's too small. You work on the Pacific side. Philippines, that's the Philippine deep. Hindi ka nag-work yung pambobola kung ganun eh, so wala pa nag-invest. It's impossible yan. As far as energy development 10 years from now, if only these distribution utilities and NGCP will comply with their obligations to contract properly, we will have a stronger system na walang masyadong mga outages. So, yeah. There are strategies for conditional and unconditional as far as getting funding is concerned. So, ang sinasabi natin unconditional is the energy efficiency aspect ng quota natin, the nationally determined contribution natin. So, the government energy efficiency management program is an unconditional thing where we will spend for it. No? Kasi yung government naman, parang kami yung consumer, yung government. But all the rest, we wanted it to be conditional. Tumulong kayo sa yung developing countries for the Philippines. So that's how we are strategizing our dealings with the international community. But whether or not it's 72.3, baka mas madami pa. It really depends. Gumagalaw siya. But that was the number that was presented me. Next slide. Sorry, next slide. Next question.
Next.
Naubos na yata.
I think that's it, Brad. Siguro before we close the session, Wimpy, maybe your parting message to the group, no, before we close this.
I think the common goal that we have as Filipinos, whether you're here or abroad, is that we love the country. And I really get irritated when we already have problems in the West Philippine Sea, and we still have a lot of detractors here in the country, making a big issue out of community pantries, criticizing government. So we really have to work already as a country. We have to mature. Tumanda naman tayo. So, yun lang. Just like what we do before, love the Upsilon, you have to love the Philippines. And the country has to have a very strong, credible presence in the international community, no matter how small we are now or how big we are in the future. We are very hardworking, especially our health workers are known to be the most compassionate ones. But we have to treat them well here. So there are a lot of challenges and matters to improve on. But we have to look at it from the positive side, that we will have to work on it and not blame other people or other sectors on it. We really have to help each other, whether we like the president or not, whether we like the government or not, we have to help each other. Otherwise, saan tayo pupunta? I mean, we only have one country. Kung hindi naman sinasabi ni Norman, we only have one Mother Earth. So sirain ba natin? Matulungan din tayo. Yun lang.
All right. Maraming salamat, brother. Norman, there is a request here to share the slides.
Yeah, go ahead.
So, okay. So we will be sharing. So just, I guess if you can send your email addresses here, on the chat box for those who want a copy.
Post it on the chat box and they can
Okay. Yeah. Sige. Norman, can you share the file on the chat box? All right. So before so bago tayo mag-close, I think Norman, we will be sharing the next sessions, I suppose, right? Tama ba? So can you open the slide for that?
Hershey, ikaw na kaya mag-share sa chat box. Mas madali.
Yun. Thank you. Thank you, Hershey. Yun, that's it. There it is. Thank you, Hershey.
Paki-download na lang po. Sa mga computer niyo. I-download it. Para wala nang mga padala-padala sa email.
Yep, thank you. So the file is in the chat box. So kung gusto po ninyo ng kopya, please feel free to download. All right. Norman, the next sessions.
I think it's sharing. So I can turn off my mic already and the video, right?
Thank you, Brother Wimpy. Thank you very much. So that ends our first session on this U-Talk series. Please look out for the upcoming events or the upcoming talks that we will be having. Unilever's Climate Transition Action Plan, which will be delivered by Brother Ed Sunico, Batch 86. He is the Vice President for Communications for Unilever. We also have Brother Kisig Lopez, Batch 90, who will be talking about how plant-based consumption lowers greenhouse gases. So Kisig is a plant-based food producer. And then renewable energy opportunities in the Philippines with Carlo Vega, Batch 98. He is a VP from First Gen Philippines. The rise of environmental, social governance standard in climate finance, Mig Sagkal of Astris Finance. Sustainable Water Resources Management from my batchmate also, Justin Valerio, who is a water specialist based in New Zealand. Green Building Practices from another batchmate of ours, Anton Villacorta. He's an architect based in Alaska and is a project manager there. And then Sustainable Aquaculture Practices with Sasa Miralao, batch 98, who is a marine biologist. Carbon-Free Transportation from Adam Altura, 2010, and Lance Yupingkun, batch 2010 from Tesla. Norman, do we have a date already for the next UTalks? Nakamute ka, batch. Wala pa. So, but we will...
no date yet, but we'll announce them in the residents' social media pages.
All right. So I guess that's it for tonight. Again, Brother Wimpy, thank you very much for your time. Thank you for that very informative lecture. So with that, we say good evening, good night to everyone. Maraming salamat po for joining our first UTalk series on climate change. So good evening, good night. Maraming salamat po.